Janine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we start every episode. Everybody gets the same question, Janine. What's an early life moment that, as you look back on it now, it was an inflection point for who you've become as a professional?
I think back, I was working, I'll use the names because I don't think it's a good story in many ways. I was working for VinFen at the time. So I had started my career off in 2002 working for the May Institute, had been there for about 10 years and was really ready for my next challenge. And so I think my title at the time was maybe senior HR manager. And I got this job working for VinFen, which was much larger, probably twice the size of the
Mm-hmm.
May Institute, one of the largest human services provider. And I was going to come in as their director of HR. So it's a new organization, it's a new position. Very excited to be there. And not long afterwards, another long story. I won't get into that, but I found myself as the top HR person because the VP of HR that I had intended to be mentored and coached by. He's still a mentor and coach to this day, but he had to leave. He left maybe about after a month or so of me being there. It was unexpected. And so now here I am. There's no VP of HR.
The
It's
last.
the last person standing. And, and there was so much work to do. It was a wonderful opportunity. But I was moving too fast. I came in, I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to make a name for myself. And I will never forget the senior VP of their behavioral health services at the time, sort of pulled me aside and said to me, you're talking an awful lot in these meetings and you need to be in listening mood.
Hmm.
And I was one taken aback. I don't remember the conversation we were having, but I know it was not about that. And so the advice came unsolicited and unexpected. Um, and it is the only time that I remember I actually just started crying because I was working so hard and I wanted so badly to impress her. She had been there at the time, I think, for almost 30 years. She had grown up at VinFen. Very, very, I think she's now retired. Um, and I was angry about it. I remember coming home that night and bad talking her with my husband and like, oh my God, like who does she think she is? I can't believe she said that to me. And I will tell you, it took a while to get sort of the blessing behind that and understand the real message behind it. And I now one give that advice in a much kinder way. She was very direct with me. But I take that advice. So any new role that I have started since then, I go in listening mode, right? It's not about trying to fix everything and prove your value and your worth. And, it's really trying to truly understand what the issues are, truly understand who the stakeholders are, and
Mhm.
then seeing how you can add value.
Mhm.
And being mindful about how you try to add that value too. Folks who've been in their roles and in their, companies for long periods of time don't always take kindly to the young whippersnapper coming in there and with all the
Changing everything.
ideas,
Yeah.
changing everything or trying to change things with. So it was really one of those things that I learned it's really about listening and talking to people and understanding before and then offering suggestions,
Mm.
rather than just trying to fix everything and you know
Yeah.
prove your value right off the bat.
It's a great story and a great message. And it sounds like it was a great messenger in the end. You had somebody,
Mm,
a good coach in there. And
yes,
it's good to have those kinds of people who will say, will speak truth to us in our careers,
yeah,
right? That's
yes.
great. Tell us about advocates, and the people you serve, the mission,
Mm.
the great mission of your organization, the scale of it, just so people who don't know much about advocates can learn a little bit about what you do in the world.
Yeah. So, we're about 2,700. We just went through a merger with two smaller sister agencies, HME and Family Continuity, last July. So going into the merger, we were probably about 1,600 and then we scaled by about 40%. So we're now about 2,700 employees across Massachusetts primarily. We do have a presence in Rhode Island and we have a couple prescribers that we have one in North Carolina and one in Florida.
Mm,
But we basically offer a pretty comprehensive range of programs and supports to help individuals and their families with any form of disability and other life challenges. It's sort of how we look at it. So whether it could be a developmental, intellectual, mental health, addiction, any number of life challenges. And really our philosophy, sort of interestingly enough, kind of ties in very nicely with that story I just told. It's really a partnership. So it's really about listening. It's kind of right there in our philosophy and our values, the advocates way, how we do things. We listen first and then we partner and try
mm,
to help you, live the best life that you can.
mm.
So it's really about empowering people, respecting people's agency in their own lives. It's not about sort of coming in and telling people what to do or we have the credentials and we know best. It's really respecting the fact that you are an expert in your own life and how
Mm.
can we partner with you to support you to live that best life and to overcome those challenges.
Wow. And how do people come to find advocates, people who need your services or want your services?
Just a various number of ways, people either through partnerships through our state partners, or people just finding our services online or walking through the doors of one of our clinics and seeking supports that way.
Wow. And you said 2,700 employees, Janine? Is that wow?
2,700, yeah,
Wow.
and
And how many
growing.
people do you serve in a given year? Ballpark it.
About 40,000. So we are
Wow.
now about 40,000 individuals and families.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
So it takes quite a bit of infrastructure to serve that many people and to support that many employees doing this great work. Tell us a little bit about your org structure and in particular how you set up your HR structure and what the goals you have for your talent and HR team.
Mm. So we have a relatively new model. So when I first started at Advocates and we were a little bit smaller, it was more of a centralized model of HR, meaning that we didn't really have a field HR presence. Everybody sort of worked in the corporate office.
Ah,
Um, staff, if you had a question as a staff member, you call the director of benefits. If you had a question about benefits, you called the director of employee relations if you had an employee relations question. And so as we've gotten larger, we rolled out the HR business partner model and really trying to work with our staff to have one point of contact. So you don't need to know, the 10 or 11 people who are in corporate HR at the time. You don't need to know what we all do and who's in charge of what. You can just go to your HR business partner. If they don't have the answer, they will then find the answer or connect you with that subject matter expert within our corporate office. So we are about 37 staff members now.
hmm.
So our team has grown significantly. That
Sure.
includes training and development as well. But the HR business partner model has been pivotal, and it's still new for advocates. So people are still getting used to it. That the Laura Miller, who's our wonderful director of benefits, has been with us for coming up on 20 years soon. People still tend to go to her because they know her and they trust her.
Right.
So we know that that will always exist. Um, but at the same time, we want them to have other resources and we want folks to just get to know their HR business partners and see them as that first point of contact.
Yeah. Tell us about your employees, Janine. You started to tell
Mm,
when we first met, you would tell me a little about you're unique in that way, where you have a lot of foreign-born employees. Tell us
mhm.
more about your employee base, where they come from, and what's important to them
Hmm.
about
Yeah, so
advocates and about what the organization does to support them.
yeah, so we are about, as I said, 2,700. We are 57% people of color, and you know what the data does not tell us specifically is, but we know because we know our staff and we're very connected with our staff. Most of those folks, that 57%, and even outside of that 57%, most of us are foreign born. So a lot of our direct care staff, especially, are from Uganda, Nigeria, Liberia, um, and it's important to know, and the Caribbean as well. We have some Caribbean presence, primarily
Hmm.
Haiti, but it's important to know because it sort of drives what's important to them. And I
Hmm.
always use the example of because a lot of foreign born folks, they're coming to this country, they're trying to carve out a life for their families here and abroad, right?
Mm,
So they may be working on our front lines, not making a ton of money, working very hard, multiple jobs, right? So sometimes they're 2 and 3 jobs, or working a ton of overtime even with us. So maybe they have the one job with us, but they're working a lot of overtime. Um, and really, it's to support a family here to be able to educate their children and have their children live a good life, and also to support families abroad. So benefits, and I think of myself, my husband actually is African. I'm from Trinidad. And I remember when we were first married 25 years ago, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary this weekend. Um,
congratulations.
Thank
My
you.
wife and I just
But
celebrated ours a few months ago. Look at
met, I could not get that man to save $1 in his 401k. I couldn't. And I would tease him. I said, "We are not going to grow old and I have all the money, because I will leave you and start afresh. You're not going to live off of my 401k." But it was very much for him. And I remember this like it was yesterday. He said to me that it is hard for him to plan for a future that is not guaranteed when
that.
he has family and friends and loved ones who don't even have enough to eat.
Mm.
So a priority for him, and it was important then because we didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. So we were very, early on in our marriage and in our careers, any little money that he could put away and send home, he did. And that's the reality for a lot of our staff.
Mm.
And so for knowing that, for example, we are always trying to think of benefits that are going to meet the needs of our staff. So I'm less interested in building up a 401k benefit that has a rich match and has a shorter vesting schedule. A lot of them, that's just not where that
Not where
would
their head
that
is.
would
Yeah.
that's not where their head is, right? It would serve
Yeah.
some and it would get some of our staff excited. And we
Right.
do have a match. I don't want to make it sound like we don't have a match. We have a
Right.
generous match.
Right.
Um, but I'm always more interested in trying to get benefits such as, how do we subsidize a BJ's or a AAA membership? How do we bring we now partner with a company called Reen, where people can have early access to their wages. So if I'm driving to work and my car breaks down, but I don't get paid until Friday, we've literally had staff sometimes, we don't have money to put gas in our car, or we don't have money to fix the car to get to work, to do the job.
Right.
So you can now access those wages for a very small fee, usually $2. You can access earned wages, up to 50% of your earned wages before payday. So
Wow.
it's not a payday loan, because that's the other thing. You have these predatory companies out there that will
Right. The
charge
payday
you.
loans come with very high interest. So you have, obviously, it's a free
Exactly.
way to get access to money in advance.
Exactly.
That's
And it's
great.
your money. You've already earned it. So it's
Right.
just accessing it a little bit earlier.
Right.
And we were actually surprised to see how many of our higher earner staff access that benefit. So
Hmm.
people who are even making 6 figures, people who are pretty senior, because we're all in the same boat, right? All of us could hit that, have that something happens, right? That you just have an unexpected expense that you
Right.
didn't plan for. Maybe you don't want to pull the money out of savings. Maybe you have no savings to pull from. And now we have this as a benefit. So that's one of the things that we're always trying to think about, how to meet the needs of our staff.
So
Um,
creativity with benefits is one way.
Creativity with
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, that's one way you've created a very inclusive culture. What are some of the other ways that
Hmm.
you foster that? I know you get recognized for that in the community. In fact, you won the NERA 2024 Erdlin Award for HR Excellence, and that's one of the things that you spoke about when you received the award and were recognized for. So, what are some of the other things that you do to create this inclusive culture?
Thank you for that question. We put a lot of emphasis on career development
Mm.
for our staff. As I mentioned, many of our staff are coming from other countries where they were doctors and lawyers. We literally have folks that are doctors and lawyers that are working for us in direct care positions. Um, and even some folks who might be new in their careers, so maybe they're in their early 20s and they're not even quite sure yet what they want to do. We want them to be able to see the sky's the limit with us. So regardless of where you are, we can help you with a career pathway. One of the career pathways that we're very proud of, that we've probably, we've built it out from start to finish, is our nursing pathway. That was one of the things that we saw. A lot of people were back in school. They were working full time for us and in school for nursing. And then to make matters worse, sometimes we will get that nursing license and then leave. I'm like, we need nurses. We have over 100 nurses. So we employ CNAs, LPNs, RNs, nurse practitioners, psych nurse
Ah,
practitioners. And so we have now two, very proud of these two nurse practitioners making six figures who started off with us as direct care staff
wow.
and continue to go back to school with our
So they
support,
double, triple their income by
more than triple their
more
income,
than triple their income.
more than triple their
And you're
income.
supporting their education and finding opportunities inside the organization for them
Exactly.
as they grow. Wow.
Exactly. The newest partnership we have is now one with the state, where the state, also recognizing that this is a big need in our workforce, the state is now going to, so again, I'm a direct care staff member. I'm making, maybe a little less than $20 an hour. And I'm in school. I'm in school, trying to get my LPN, but I'm also working, I'm having to work now full time. And it's hard. It's hard to work full time and be in school working on something like a clinical licensure. So the state now, and we're partnering with the state, we're one of their partners on this. The state will pay that same employee 20 hours. So we will cut their hours back by 20. So they're working half time, but they're still getting paid the other 20 hours. We're paying 20, the state's paying 20.
Wow.
And then the state will also pay for their LPN. And then once they graduate, we find them a job. And then we start to pay the state back for that investment. So it's
Wow.
both the state and advocates investing in that employee to help them become an LPN because we need, as I said, we have 100 nurses. It's a great need as well. And because we're competing with hospitals, and so we can't necessarily pay the same that a hospital would pay, but we want to be able to help people get on that career track, see see that future for themselves, and then all the other benefits and wraparound services that we can put around there, I'll put around them to help them be successful.
What do employees say is important to them about their experience at Advocates? What keeps people there? I'm sure you've
Mm,
surveyed employees, and I also know that you have much lower turnover than others in the human services field, and you can touch on that as well. But what are employees saying? Why do I stay here? Why is Advocates the place for me? Even though there are, like you said, for these people who are developing their careers, there are lots of opportunities for them
yes,
in other places if they wanted to leave.
that's right. You always, and this is so we do exit interviews, and we've been polling folks for years. And the top two reasons that folks stay are the people we support, really just loving the
The
clients,
mission. They
loving
just
those
love the mission.
folks.
Yep.
They love the mission, they love the work, and they love each other. So
Ah,
they're colleagues, and they're supervisors. So it's usually it's sometimes it's number one is the people we support, and number two are the colleagues, and sometimes we see it where number one is the colleagues, and number two the people we support. But it
mm,
really is, I walk into group homes. I was in a group home last week, and it is such a family environment.
mm.
The staff, it's that partnership that we spoke about, right? Where they're really partnering with the people that they're supporting to help them just lead the best lives possible, to get them into the communities and to be really part of the communities that they live in. All right. Going to
Mm,
the library, going to music festivals, doing things that are important and fun for them.
mm.
Um, so it's I think being part of that, and even as in HR, I'm not as close to it. I feel as if my connection is really by supporting and centering the staff, I am centering the people we support. But the folks who are closest to the work love it.
Right.
And it fills them up. And that's why they come back. And
It's
they stay.
right. That's where they spend most of their time with the
Yeah.
people who they serve, right? And
Yes.
you also touched on their relationship with their supervisors. So there's
Mhm.
something that Advocates is doing around manager and supervisor development because we all know, maybe not in your industry, but in most industries, the number one satisfier, dissatisfier
Mhm.
is that one on that relationship with their boss, their manager. What is it that you do to support the development of managers and supervisors
Mhm.
that makes them develop these great relationships and with their employees?
Yeah. I will say a couple of things. So we have our CEO, Diane Gould, has been with the organization for 40 years. I think everybody's a bit of a love fest. I think she makes in many ways my job easier because she is such an amazing leader. And the staff know her. She knows her staff. They respect her, and she centers the staff and the people we support. Um, and it's setting it's sort of the example is set for all of us from the very
Mhm.
top.
Ah,
So we had we it's our Bill Taylor Awards ceremony. Bill Taylor is our old former CEO that passed away from cancer about 10 or so years ago.
mhm.
Um, and we celebrated, we had 13 people, 13 staff members across the organization that had 35 years plus of service. And there is something about that, especially when people sort of grew up in the organization. So they were direct care staff members or they were in an entry level position. And we sort of nurture and grow them. So we have emerging leaders programs, we have formal and informal mentoring relationships with
Mhm.
folks. But it's you sort of know, kind of like how I knew, I suppose, um, that when I was going to be in a position of leadership, I knew the kind of leader I wanted to be. I knew what worked and what didn't work because we've all had supervisors, and we've all had supervisors that were effective and some that weren't as effective.
Mhm.
So really, it's kind of like, what sort of leader do you want to be? Who are we as an organization? And we really try to do a good job of um, sort of at the very front, the gatekeepers, if you will. So our hiring managers, our recruitment team, being very clear and upfront about who we are, our values, our philosophy. And it's not for everybody. The work is not
Mhm.
for everybody. It's hard work, but
Mhm.
we do it in a particular way. We do it with, and I don't mean to be cliched about it, but we really do it with heart. As I said, that philosophy of listening and partnership with the clients. Is everything. And if you can't do that, if it's more about, again, my credentials and I know best and I have the training and I'm the expert, we really do try to believe and practice that people are the experts in their own lives. Um, and giving people as much autonomy over their own lives as possible. So again, just trying to give people as much autonomy and support to make good decisions, but make it is ultimately their decision and supporting them in their decision making.
Our audience of the Hennessy Report is mostly HR people of all levels,
Mm,
and I'm curious for our listeners, what's important to you about the people you hire on your team, on your HR team? What
mhm.
kind of person are you looking for? Who are the kinds of people that really thrive inside your organization?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, I want the staff to be able to look at their HR team and see themselves reflected. So when I started 6.5 years ago, I was employee number 11 on the HR team, and I was the second person of color. I had a Brazilian woman, and then there was me, and that was it. And
Mhm.
again, as I mentioned, and even back then, the statistics were similar. We're 57% people of color. All right. So for me, as we've grown, the team has grown because the staff, the workforce has grown. It's been important to have that diversity, and not just racial and ethnic diversity, but we have members of the LGBTQ plus community. I want folks on my team that staff, regardless of who they are and where they are, they see themselves reflected in every way.
Mhm.
Age, race, ethnicity, LGBTQ plus community. Um, I want them to see themselves. And I want them so that's first. And I want them to always feel valued and respected. Even if we're terminating somebody, there's a way that you can terminate somebody in a respectful manner. I'm not good
Absolutely.
because you did something wrong or you did something terrible that we think is we're going to treat you differently or in some way just sort of disrespect your service to the organization. So I
Mhm.
think that respect and having respect for our staff, you should be speaking to the staff the same way you speak to our CEO, right? There should be no way. I shouldn't be, there should be no difference. I shouldn't be able to tell, oh, she must be talking to, you
Uh,
know, the CEO or a senior leader
so when
versus
you're hiring people, you want to see them treat everybody with equal respect, regardless of their
absolutely,
place. I once heard that
absolutely.
integrity is treating people who may not be able to do anything for you the same way you treat anyone else, right? That's a sign of integrity, you know? So,
Absolutely.
That's really great.
Absolutely. We can teach you a lot of things. And I'm also very proud of the fact that, we have folks that were working in services and, had interest in HR, and we were able to bring them in and train them up. And we can figure out the trading piece, but the heart piece and the respect piece,
Yeah.
and your values need to be aligned with us as an organization and with the team. And that is one of our values. We treat everybody with respect, regardless of their position, and place within the organization.
Janine, it was really great to hear you say about treating when somebody no longer fits the organization, how you treat them so well. I don't know if you know, but that's really most of what we do at Keystone. And
Mm,
we support organizations who
okay.
are having usually, you know, not involuntary separations and supporting people. And you're so right, because they may have done nothing wrong. They might have not fit the organization anymore. Maybe their skills were there was a gap, or maybe something just changed. They don't have a great relationship with their current manager, or their skill sets aren't fitting anymore. It doesn't mean that someday in the future they couldn't come back to the organization,
Right.
or they might refer somebody to advocates, or or they might be somebody who um, is talking to current employees about their experience. And if they feel like they were treated really well, even though it was a hard decision, that's all good for the organization, right? Coming back. I mean, that's not
Absolutely.
the only reason to do it. It's the right thing to do, but it's good for organizations to treat people well when there's tough
Absolutely.
decisions. It all comes back.
Absolutely.
So,
I will tell you too, I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's something I didn't think of. But we have new hire orientation every week. We onboard folks. And I can't remember the last time we had a new hire orientation where we didn't have at least one boomerang employee. We call them the boomerang employees. They may
yeah,
leave, they may go back, do something different, maybe
right,
get more skills and come right back to us. It happens all the time. We have a fair number of folks that worked for us, left and came back. And to your
right,
point, even if it's not under great circumstances, um, even the number of lawsuits, it's we trend much lower because again, I always say a lot of times when people file a lawsuit, it's not necessarily that so you may get a lawsuit, for example, and I'm not talking about advocates specifically, but a company may get a lawsuit about, you know, with the Mass Commission Against Discrimination around some discriminatory practice. I was terminated because I was part of this protected class, and the company now has to defend against that charge. A lot of times, and they'll say it too, it's not that the employee actually necessarily believes that they were that okay, because I was part of this particular group, you discriminated against me. What they do believe is that you mistreated me. All right. And this may be a way to bring a lawsuit and to have, to
right,
kind of hold you as the employer accountable, but it's not necessarily always what it appears to be. But at the basis of it is usually I felt disrespected. I felt I
yes,
was treated unfairly. I felt that I was treated differently. So it's kind of like again, we it's drilled into everybody's heads on my team. It's
right.
ultimately treating people with respect. They may not agree with what you're saying or doing
That's
or
right.
like it, but if they feel the respect throughout the entire process,
That's right. Right. They'll get
it
over the
makes a
decision.
difference.
They won't get over being treated
That's
unfairly
right.
or
That's right.
meanly or, right. But people get over
Yes.
decisions, business
Yes.
decisions. So,
Yes.
well, as the newest board member of NERA, congratulations, Janine,
Thank you.
on joining our board. We want to have the NERA question of the podcast, which we have in every episode. And our producer of the Hennessy Report here at Keystone, in cooperation with NERA, is Megan Mandino. So she comes in and she'll ask you the NERA question of the podcast.
Right. Thank you.
Hi,
Megan.
Janine. Um,
Hi.
so we were wondering, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self, maybe when
Hmm.
you were just starting in HR or just starting to kind of take off in your career?
So there are two pieces of advice, I think. I think one, always believing in yourself. And I know, again, it sounds a little cliched. And sort of believing, not just believing in yourself, because I don't think confidence has never really been much of a problem for me. I've always maybe had sometimes my mom would say a little too much confidence. There's not much I don't think I can do. But for me, in my personal story, because I love the connection with the staff so much, I stayed in roles longer than I probably needed to because I was afraid that the higher that I went, the more removed I would be from the staff. That was always my mindset. And I think what I wish I knew is that I have the ability to be the architect in that. So as I mentioned, I make it a point to get out to at least two of my group homes. We have over 100 of them every month
Wow.
to find ways to connect with staff. If somebody emails me or calls me up and says, I want to meet with you, I'm going to meet with you. Right? Not being too high up in the organization and the same thing with our CEO and our COO. We all do it. You prioritize staff and connection with staff. And finding ways. If that was my fare, I wish what I would have done was, okay, if that's my fare, it's finding ways in that next role to make sure that I don't lose that. And so I figured that out, but I figured that out later. Not terribly later, but later than I think of one position. I was there for 8 years, and I had already outgrown the job, and I was ready for the next challenge. But that really was what it was. I did not want to. I was afraid that I would just lose that connection with staff. I loved being able to sit with somebody who was pregnant with their first child and map out what their leave would look like and how they could utilize the benefits to get the most out of that. How they could, just like those kinds of details, really trying to be a partner with staff. And I was afraid of losing it.
I would imagine having so many years working so directly with staff and having that be one of your kind of drivers. Do you have any stories of things that you've learned from working so closely with them that maybe you brought to your higher positions to maybe put more as a rule for the organization or for a policy?
Good, because I'm going to answer that in two different ways. One, I'll answer the policy question. And the second one, just more like my philosophy with my HR staff. So my expectation for my team is that everybody gets out into our programs and finds ways to connect with staff. Because for some, it's easier than others. So our benefits team, they're connecting with everybody as they come through the door, new hire orientation, open enrollment. So they're easier ways. But our recruitment team, for example, we really had, a conversation with them. How are you going to be recruiting for a program if you don't really understand the program or you don't know the staff and the managers that are at that program? So really going out there and getting to know the people, again, that you're serving. One recruiter even, she took it a step further. I'm very proud of her. She, every month with her daughter, goes into one of the group homes and they volunteer and they do arts and craft with the people we support. And that's her way of not only staying connected with the staff, but with ultimately the people that we support. So they all know her and look forward to the arts and craft project. That's the kind of thing that I want for everybody in our team. So you don't, again, either get so removed from what we're doing that you lose that connection with the staff and the people that we're supporting. So that's number one. And then we have many examples of policies and practices that we've changed, again, just from connecting with the staff. So I'll share two, one that we did already and one that is in progress. Again, I mentioned that a lot of our staff are foreign born and, they're from, if they're African, they're going home and home is a way. It could take you quite a while to get there. And then even sometimes once you land in the country, if you're visiting friends and family that might be in a village, for example, that could be a whole other 2 days before you could even get there. And we had rules in place where if you needed to, take more than 2 weeks off, it needed to be a personal leave. You needed to basically jump through a whole bunch of hoops. And we changed that years ago so that now people could, if you've saved up your time, now, number one, if you have the time to cover, say, a 3 or 4 week vacation, that tells me you've been showing up for us all year long, right? You've been saving your PTO, and that's why you have it available. You give us enough notice so that we can plan accordingly because we're going to have to plan for your absence. We're not going to, post your job while you're gone. But really just trying to, one, make sure that people are accruing enough paid time off that they could, go home if they need to, or do other things that are important to them. And then again, trying to cut down on some of those barriers. And we heard that directly from our staff members. Like, it's hard. It's hard to pay that kind of money and go home for 2 weeks. And you're telling me that we have to jump through all these hoops just to be able to do that, or it has to be more like a medical need or what have you. So again, those were rules that we've changed. I'm actually proud to say that this is the second agency now that we don't do that. Like that's just something, because our workforce is pretty much the same across this whole industry. And we did that at the May, and we did that here at Advocates as well. One of the things that came up recently, and again, it's still in the works. So hopefully by the time this podcast is published, this would be out there. So basically, one of the things that Advocates does is if somebody is in a per diem or relief position. So I'm in a non-benefit eligible position. So I might work maybe once a month, a couple times a month, picking up shifts here and there. I probably have another job, primary job somewhere else. But then, wonderful news, I've decided to go part-time or full-time. And I'm going to be in a benefit eligible position, and I'm going to be accruing PTO.
That's great.
I was just going to say that really sounds like when you talk about fairness, and it kind of comes back in every conversation, and it sounds like everything ultimately comes back to trust, and trust in the organization, and trust in HR. So thank you.
Thank you.
One last question, Janine, on advocates and HR. What's something you want to make sure you don't leave undone over the next 5 years, either in your career or at Advocates? So what's something you want to make sure gets accomplished in addition to what you just told us?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe by putting it out there in the atmosphere. One of the things I'd really like to do is to build a center of excellence around professional development for our staff. We have a lot of clinicians. We have a lot of, nurses. We have social workers, psychiatrists. We have a lot of folks that have licensure and need CEs for their licensure in order to maintain their licensure. And we have a lot of smart and talented folks that have the ability to provide those CEs. We have done some work. Our Senior Director of Career Development, Zoe Holder, to be ACE accredited. So she herself is a social worker. And so we're kind of building the foundation to be able to be an organization that provides in-house those CEs to our staff. Baby steps, that's our first step, to be able to do that and to do it reliably, consistently, have a calendar so people know, okay, I can go and I can get 2 CEs for this particular training, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we really get our sea legs under us, I want to bring that out to other agencies and have other agencies be able to come to us, pay, of course, but bring some revenue into the organization and have us be seen as that center of excellence. The other piece that we're working on, slightly unrelated, we also serve deaf and hard of hearing people. And so we have deaf and hard of hearing staff. We have many deaf and hard of hearing staff. And, one of the things that we're very, very proud of is being an agency where we provide equal access. So if we are providing, for example, we just had our commissioner, the DMH commissioner, Commissioner Doyle, Brooke Doyle, came and spoke to us for an hour. We provide monthly, just different career development opportunities where we could hear from subject matter experts within our organization, outside of our organization. So she came and she was our speaker for this month. It's May's Mental Health Awareness Month. And, to have something like that and to be able to make it open and accessible to the entire community, we make sure that we have ASL interpreters present so that live it's being recorded. So if somebody couldn't show, they were working, they were not able to attend, they can, it's going to be on our intranet, they can go back and they can watch it, and they can watch it with that, again, embedded ASL interpretation, because again, it can't be accessible to part of our community and not the full community. We do the same thing even with our benefits, open enrollment. We put out a brain shark that has all the various benefits, the changes, highlighting all of that. And we work with a company to have ASL and interpreters embedded into the brain shark itself and have it closed captions. So again, people have full access. Anything that we're trying to do, we want it to be fully
Full
accessible.
access. That's great.
So I kind of went off a little bit of a beaten path tangent there, but bringing it back to the question, one of the things that we do in trying to provide access is we have some of our trainings, our MAP training, which is the medication administration training, for folks who are passing medications to folks that we serve. We want to make sure that we have an ASL class for that, right? So that folks who are deaf and hard of hearing, where ASL is their spoken language, that they can access these trainings easily. What we are talking about doing is making some of these trainings accessible to our sister agencies that also have deaf services programs and hire and employ deaf and hard of hearing people, so that again we want to work more as a team across various organizations, so that we can help and support one another, so that we can better support our deaf and hard of hearing staff, whether that's through training, leadership training. Like, so we're early on in the stages of having something like that as well. So all of that under the umbrella of career development and training. And I'd love within the next 5 years, if we talk again, that is up and running. Maybe even named after me, if I could be that lucky. I'm kidding. But that is my
That's your vision.
That's my goal.
I
That's
think
my
you're
vision.
going to get there. You're going to get there, Janine. That's great. We have two last questions for you.
Sure.
What's something interesting about you that we won't find on your bio?
Something interesting about me that you won't find on my bio. I would say, much to my husband's, he worries about it, because I really do enjoy true crime television. I love it. I love it. And I didn't know how many women loved it until Saturday Night Live did a skit on it a while back. But it's sort of, it sounds somewhat disturbing that people, because you're thinking like, I wouldn't say that I get enjoyment. I just find it interesting. People fascinate me, and people's behavior fascinate me. So, I do enjoy watching true crime television.
It's a guilty pleasure. It sounds like, Janine. Well, I think the whole podcast world, that was one of the early things one of the early successful podcasts was Serial, like 10 years ago. I think that was one of the leaders. So interesting. When you have spare time, what do you like to fill it with, Janine? Besides true crime?
Yeah.
In addition to what more active things do you like to do in your spare time, when if all of a sudden your calendar opens up? Where do you spend your time?
I absolutely enjoy just being involved in my community in a multitude of different ways. So I'm the chair of the DEI commission in my town. I'm on the steering committee of the Racial Climate Community Group, which is part of our high school. And one of the things I'm most proud of, I'm a board member of the Newton Food Pantry. And interestingly enough, they reached out to, it was the then chair of the board who said, because it's in Newton, it's not, they were concerned that the board itself was not very diverse. They were also concerned at the time that the pantry was growing to the point where we needed to hire staff. And so they said, you know what, it would be good to have somebody with an HR background on the board, and it would be good to have a person of color. Again, we are serving, a diverse community. There's a lot more diversity in Newton than one might think. And we want that, we want that board, we want our board to reflect the diversity of our community and the people that we're serving. And so they reached out to Tracy Burns of NERA and asked her. And she put forth me and Allegra. And both of us, Allegra is still a volunteer. She was on the board briefly. And I'm a volunteer, and I'm now on the board as well. But I spend a lot of time, in fact, I'll be there this afternoon with the Newton Food Pantry. They do wonderful, wonderful work. And I'm very, very proud to be part of that organization as well. I think I shared with you before, Dave, that I'm one generation removed from food insecurity on my father's side. And so
you told me.
It's humbling, and it's one of those things that I feel blessed. I never had to experience. And so again, if I can play a small part in making someone a little less food insecure.
Right.
Again, coming, and it's the same principles, right? Coming to the pantry and coming with being treated with dignity and
Right.
respect.
What you do with advocates is,
Yeah.
I'm sure they're benefiting from a lot of
Yes.
the skills you have that you've developed
Yes.
at Advocates. That's great. Well, so great having you on the podcast, Janine. Great hearing your story and Advocate story and the great mission that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.